This is a 3.3 Reconstruction summary video. If you haven't already, please go and watch the full-length video that's also linked on Edmodo and on YouTube. The purpose of Reconstruction was really to kind of put the country back together and then help the former slaves. During Reconstruction, former slaves get a lot of rights, but those rights disappear quickly after the Army leaves the South. And that's one of the most important points that you need to learn from this lesson. To clarify even further, Reconstruction is not about rebuilding the South. It's more about putting the South back into the Union and what the South will have to do to get back into the Union. Some of the most important things to come out of Reconstruction were the Civil Rights Amendments. These were the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The 13th Amendment freed the slaves. The 14th Amendment gave citizenship rights to former slaves and made the Bill of Rights applicable to everybody. The 15th Amendment gave all male citizens the right to vote, regardless of color. While the federal troops or the U.S. Army troops are in the South, they were able to protect these rights for African Americans. However, once they leave, African Americans lose a lot of those rights. Some of the results of those civil rights amendments were that African Americans could move away from their old plantations, and they did. They did not, however, stop farming. Most of them stayed on a plantation somewhere farming, but most of them moved somewhere else, maybe to find like lost relatives or to go someplace to a different landowner. Some African Americans moved west. These were called the exodusters that moved out west to farm. Former slaves also began to attend their own churches. Another important element to Reconstruction was the creation of the Freedmen's Bureau, and that was created to help former slaves by starting schools, giving them an education, and sometimes they would also even help negotiate with white farmers on their behalf. One of the promises during the Civil War was 40 acres and a mule, and that's something the Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to help achieve for African Americans and former slaves. These increased rights did not sit well with a lot of white Southerners, and so they ended up passing black codes, which basically put African Americans back in slavery-like conditions. They also started electing former Confederates back to Congress. So it was like nothing ever changed. There were groups like the Ku Klux Klan that were in the South that intimidated former slaves and other African Americans. As a result, Congress started to get more involved in Reconstruction. This is called Congressional Reconstruction. It was led by the radical Republicans. They're the ones who put the Army in the South to protect African Americans' rights, and they end up impeaching President Johnson, although he was not kicked out of office. This is where Congress really takes over Reconstruction and makes it a little bit more radical and a little bit more extreme. During Reconstruction in the South, there were three groups that voted Republican in the South, and they're looked on very negatively by white Southern Democrats. First was carpetbaggers. They were Northerners that moved to the South, hence the name carpetbaggers, like they would put their carpet bag on their shoulder and walk down. The scalawags, which were Southerners that became Republicans to try and gain an advantage economically, and then African Americans who also voted Republican because of Abraham Lincoln and the 13th Amendment and freeing the slaves. The South was very Democratic during Reconstruction, with a lot of different people having a say in the government. However, white Southern Democrats did not like that very much. One of the biggest failures of Reconstruction was that it did not help African Americans economically at all. In fact, most African Americans, they stayed on the plantation because that's what they knew. They knew how to farm. The Freedmen's Bureau ended up getting vetoed and not passed again. Therefore, African Americans never received their 40 acres and a mule. They also lost out on the educational opportunities that the Freedmen's Bureau was going to give them. Instead of plantations, African Americans became sharecroppers or on the crop lien system. Both sharecropping and the crop lien system are very, very unfair towards African Americans. This is a really good diagram that I found to show why sharecropping was so bad. What it really does is it keeps African Americans indebted, and also white poor farmers indebted to the landowner, and so they're almost like slaves in how they really can't get off the land. They constantly owe the landowner money. It's really, really a bad system economically for African Americans and poor white farmers. This concludes Section 3.3 summary. Please go to Edmodo to turn in the notes guide and take the video quiz. And if you have not already, then go ahead and watch the rest of the 3.3 video that's also linked online. Thank you.